Okay, breakdown. Okay, so now breaking down your jump. Again, the real reason and function and benefit of this kind of key breakdown and in-betweens system is the way it allows you to organize and focus. So the keys, as you should have just watched the previous one. I see we did. The keys really set up the whole parameters of the jump. It's really the only time that you actually think about the full jump. Now with the breakdowns, you're going to start looking at parts and details, right? Because really when it comes down to it, breakdowns are details of movement. They're not the general. The keys set that up. And really what that allows you to do, and again, going back to just straight hit animation and focusing on spacing, if you're going to figure out start a jump and you just start with this character here, and you're like, well, and you're trying to think about how the character's going to be landing yet, 30 drawings down the road, and at first you start by just thinking about, okay, I'm going to start moving this hand, and when does the knee bend, etc. This can be quite overwhelming when you're just focusing on spacing. However, what the keys, breakdowns, etc. let you do is it lets you think about the overall quickly and quite succinctly, and then focus on parts. So let's now talk about and again, as I said in the previous video, it's not so much about what's a key, what's a breakdown, it's about phases of workflow. So first think about the whole, get that down, get your story down, and then now what this allows you to do is, in the breakdown phase, start looking at your keys and go, okay, now the character I know needs to go from here to here, from key 1 to key 2. How should that happen? Now again, the last assignment we did is very limited, so I had you guys only do one breakdown, but really when it comes down to it, there could be multiple breakdowns, there could be 2 breakdowns, 3, depends on the nuance of your animation. If you overly break it down, you get to the point where you're almost down to 2s by the time you break down, and by the time you film your breakdown animatic, and you're done, right? You have very few in-betweens. It just depends on how you work as an animator, but when you get really used to breakdowns, they can become almost a surgical thing. In many ways, what I gave you last week with the first breakdown assignment was very simple and rudimentary, but at the same time, having only one breakdown to cause a very complex motion is almost at the same time a little more of an advanced thing to do, right? Because if you really know breakdowns, you're super surgical with them, you can get that one drawing to bring into movement all this certain drag, different chart timing, etc. for different parts, like overlapping action, etc. So if you really learn breakdowns, you can do a lot with a little in them. But here, right, you can break down as much as you want. And for instance, with this idea, one thing to be mindful of with the difference between the single breakdown of last time versus now you have multiple breakdowns. One thing, a very big limitation you had, let's say with drag, is if you're going from here to here, right, in a breakdown, you decide to put one drag breakdown here, then no matter what, you get the way the drag works, it goes from key, it's always going towards drag till it hits that breakdown, and then it's immediately releasing, right? With one breakdown, that's about the only way you can do it. You can change the position of that drag, where the kind of most drag is at the given point, but it's always going to be going towards and then out of that drag. If you have multiple breakdowns, what you can do is let's say if your key here and here again, I can say, well, I want to reach full drag here, right? And I want to stay in drag until this point, and then I don't want to release drag till here. So then you have a breakdown of drag here, and you have another breakdown of drag here, and then now it goes into drag, hits drag here, stays in drag, and then now releases drag, right? So you can get a little more specific. The controls are a little more controllable or controlling with multiple breakdowns. So yeah, so let's take your first 2 keys. Just go from this. And I'll give myself a place to play with breakdowns. Let's to the anticipation key we talked a bit about at the end of the last video. Now hopefully when you were planning your general jump for the keys, you did film yourself jumping and explore possibilities to jump that way. You know, look at the book for inspiration. Also look at the book for stuff that you physically can't do. But then you can also act parts out or feel out the jump. Don't like where his feet are right here. That's a little bit nicer. But also too, now I would say, but don't think you're done with the physical part. Like here's where I think it becomes also equally as effective. Now we're just thinking about how we go from this to this. This is where I would definitely, you can film yourself, but also I just kind of think doing it yourself and paying attention to what you're doing, feeling it out yourself. You don't have to necessarily film it, but this is where this is the whole process idea, is now all we're doing is we're taking our first two keys and thinking about how we go from here to here, right? There's the character with no breakdowns. It would just be very dull and simple. Maybe there'd be a slow and slow out, but the character would very mechanically go, right? And then that's it. But when you kind of do it yourself, you'll do stuff like this. There's many ways, right? Explore them, play with them, stand up, do something, feel it out. Because there's tons of ways this could happen, right? So one of the ways I just did right here, I just like started by doing this and like that. Now we talked about this, about the anticipation of the drawing. Now technically if I do this into that, it's another anticipation. You can anticipate anticipation of an anticipation, blah, 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 blah. But that's totally fine. Again, it's not so much about what is a key, what's a breakdown, it's about this working process. The idea that you can first figure out the character's gonna go from here to here and then the rest of the jump, and then now focus. I'm gonna look at this and look at that. So, I'll change colors for breakdowns. So for instance, right, so I could have the character, what did I do, something like this, right? When I just did it now, I'm on my tippy toes, so why not, let's do it. Bring it up a little higher. What does his head do? No, it was weird to go up. It'll go down further. Also too, and I said this to a few of you last week, one way I will also play with breakdowns, especially if I'm kind of having not finding something really interesting. Again, going back to this kind of supple, loose, first pass type of drawing, I will just move, like I'll just put a piece of paper, start and look between these two keys, and then just on my breakdown drawing, just make a couple marks, like, well, what if the hand goes here, and I'll flip it. If I don't like that position, like I say, what if it's here? I'll flip it on my thing, and like if I don't like it, then I'll erase it, and like, oh, what if it ends up here or here, right? And then just in flipping it might not look like a hand. That's not important, but I know it's this hand, and then I can start to see the motion a little bit. And very rarely I'll just put a random line down because I'm having trouble thinking of something interesting. Very rarely that'll happen. Like, well, that's perfect. Let's use it. More often, as I start to like find different ways, like of that, this, that, these kind of random experiments, that finally triggers a good idea, right? Like, oh wait, I can go this way. This is interesting. Blah blah blah. So between physically acting it out and then also playing with just kind of throwing things down and feeling, seeing the arc it creates, seeing the movement it makes you imagine. This is where you can come up with interesting ideas. And again, as I said last week, the breakdown phase is extremely creative, and one thing I'm looking at for this jump test is how creative you get, not only with the keys, but in particular with the breakdowns. How there's 1,000 ways we can go from here to here, that you're thinking of something interesting and not just doing the most straightforward, boring thing. So, okay, more drawing. So yeah, what did I do? I did this. So shoulders up. I don't know if I like. I don't know if I like that actually. And again, you could say this is a new key because this is an extreme. This is higher, right? It's now an extreme high, but it's not about what's a key, what's a breakdown. It's really about working method. breakdown phase. So here, right now, he does this. And then also I could add a breakdown here. Let's say I wanted to now break down between these two, and I decided the arm should start that, right? This is like pure overlapping action. Overlapping action is also part of drag. You know, when you have drag and follow through, the fact that the dragging following through element is moving at different timing than the primary element, that's overlapping action as well. But here's just straight overlapping action, right? It's not based on drag and follow through. It's just because now we have this person with agency that can just start. So it could be I decide I just want the arms, really what's called, I'll call stagger, although I don't know, maybe this isn't a stagger, this is just overlapping action. So instead of going like together, right now I'll have the arms start. So, right, so instead of this, I get, right, so that slight difference between when the arms start and when the body start. And I can do that with another breakdown right here, right? So I got lots of colors here, and they all work. So let's say I had this drawing here where I'm essentially not moving the rest of the body, right? I'm not moving the body, I'm gonna just move so this would be essentially a tracing of the body just behind it, or would be on top of it, right? In animation on your pigs. And then I just start by doing this. Right, so that now means the character is going to go. So not only did I overlap the arms and the body movement, right? They have different timings now. But I also started by extending the arms here. So now instead of just doing this, right? They go. This is breakdown, right? That's the breakdown activity. It's details of movement, but the details are important. They are, I think, really, like I said last week, they are the most important, or not most important. For the animator, they are really the geeky, nerdy part about movement. So now he goes like this, and then into here. And then how is he going to go from here to here? I could also drag. I could have a drawing that's like this, so I get, right? Many, many different ways. I'm going to move this guy over a little bit so I can play with it. I'm going to overdo this one a bit, but feel free to overdo yours as well. Probably 1, 2, maybe 3 breakdowns is plenty, but let's really push that limit here. All right, so here's our anticipation key. Shift it slightly over. So what did I say? I said this, so I can get a drawing where I'm starting the body to go down, but the arms are, I guess, I don't know if this is a true drag, because I would say they're passive, but effectively drag, right? So body starts to fall, but the arms kind of stay high. So and again, this is where it's important not to get caught up in drawing. It's really about where the parts are at given frames, not how well they're drawn. And you really just want to roll it. Here I would wish I had the opportunity to kind of roll it, really feel with exactly where I put this arm or how it's going to make the movement. But here I have to do it on a board. So this might be an awkward drawing, but remember, animation is not about drawing, it's about the movement it creates. Right, so now, here the body starts to fall, but the arms stay behind. It is definite details, but this is animation. And here, this is where I want to create a really kind of proper stagger, because this is really kind of important to jumps, and I do want to kind of see you use this. Really common in jumps is how the arms work to the body, and then they have overlapping action. So when you go into this pose, what you definitely don't want is the body and the arms to reach that pose at the same time. Right? It makes it very stiff, makes it very mechanical, where they hit this point together. What you want is a little bit of a delay. So most likely, I would say the body hits this position first, where you get, right? So it's this instead of that. right? That's the second is more mechanical. So what I'll do is I'll have a drawing similar to this one in many ways, is where the body is in this position. You could have it really be a tracing of this pose, or it could just be slightly shy of it, right? Really close, just as this is in the middle of the slow end to that. But, right, so the arm's gonna do that, but the arms are now in here, right? Maybe dragging. So now the body reaches this position, but the arms are still here, and that will create that overlapping action when it's in between, right, of that stagger. So this is just one possible way of breaking down like just between these two keys. Now I have 4 drawings. That I would say is on a lot. If you really want to nuance a particular motion, yeah, 4 breakdowns is totally possible. Arguably 5 if you want to go further, but I would say this is a lot. When you think about breakdowns, think about how much that movement's going to be seen. So this is quite on the slow side. And in many ways, you should have a sense of how slow, fast you want that to be with your key animatic, right? If you held this and this for a long time on your key animatic, it kind of means that you want that area to be slow, and then maybe your jump's really fast in comparison. And then the slower something is, the more there is kind of a reason to break it down, because the slower it is, the more the audience will see it. The jump being fast, right, the jump itself, right, from the extension to the apex to the landing, that tends to be pretty fast if you're doing it in a standard way. So probably you wouldn't break down those, right? You might just decide that those keys are enough and that you're just going to in between them. Most likely that means the keys that I showed you, like I said, the extension, the apex, and the extension on the way down, and the jump. Those are on 4s as they were animated in my previous video. You would just in between them. However, if you're thinking something where like you're gonna have some cartoony float part, right, where it's really quick and then he spends 8 or 12 frames at the apex kind of floating Wile E. Coyote style, and then maybe does something up there, then maybe you're gonna break down going into that pose and out of it because there's time to be seen. So it's always kind of be mindful of the slow parts where there's good breakdowns. Fast things are usually not that much breakdowns because it won't be seen. So yeah, so going back to the basic jump, right? So let me quickly do this, go from here. So going from this, right, to here. Do this really quick. Here's where I wish I had the longer boards. So the extension, apex, extension down, landing, and standing back up. Right, so from here to here, breakdown. I'm definitely expecting breakdowns in this phase. These drawings, probably not. Like I said, if you do something where you really want to make this, he floats and takes is up there for a bit, does something interesting, then you might want to need breakdowns up here. If you're just doing this kind of standard jump, probably no breakdowns. But from here to here, certainly breakdowns. I'm going to be looking for this in the test. Right, so that's between this to this drawing, as I already showed. Between here to here, there's definitely more space for breakdowns. Just as I said with this, there's a stagger going into that pose in a jump. The arms usually start the lateral part of the movement. They're part of the actual, you use your arms to kind of start to shift your weight forward. So you go into this pose here, maybe there's a little bit of a pause, a slow in at least, and then a slow out, but then you get to maybe this, and hopefully this is on camera, you get to here before the body starts to jump. So you end up with another breakdown after this, similar to where maybe the body's still in this position, but the arms are like here or something, right? So that's coming out, and then that'll bring you into this motion. So I expect more breakdowns between here and here, at least one, if not two. And then coming into the landing, this is where I really want you to think this is the follow-through phase of the test. And there's really kind of two ways to end a jump test when it comes to follow through. Either, right, when at the landing, and this is essentially two ways if you do this kind of standard type of jump. Two ways, either with the landing, there's a big follow through where the character goes through the follow through, collects themselves, and then eloquently stands up, right? That's one way. So the follow through happens around this pose, and then there's a gentle standing up. Or in the process of, or the follow through goes into the standing up. So the character jumps, lands, and like that. I'm looking for follow through, and it's complex follow through because now we're talking about a full body. But it can happen in this pose or into this pose. Just one thing I will say is what you want to think about is overlapping action, drag with the arms and the head, right? So in other words, let's say if you figure out you have all your follow through happening here in that crouch position, even then when he stands up, he's going to drag in the head, follow through in the head, right? So that's a drag is at least one breakdown, right? And then the follow through is a breakdown and then a settle. I'll be looking for all of that. This is just one possibility of just the space between here and here. Like I said, again and again, then I'm looking for breakdowns between here and here. Around this pose, if you settle in that pose and then stand up, but then breakdowns through this and this. Okay, that's the jump. I guess that's the video. I can't ask for questions.